My screen got enabled. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, can anyone confirm that? Are you able to see my screen? Was my screen visible? Yes. Okay. Okay. So all these days we are discussing about the installation of Docker and creating virtual machines in AWS account. And we have created AWS account, and we have seen how Docker has been come into picture. We have seen virtualization. We have seen virtual servers, physical servers. So we have seen all these things actually. Now today what we are going to discuss is about the Docker related things. We are going to start Docker, and we are going to discuss about the Docker architecture, and we are going to discuss about the next parts actually. Now let me show you whether my Docker is running. Let me increase the font size. Okay, now let me show you systemctl status. Okay, Docker, you can see that systemctl status Docker. If you type that one, you can see that my Docker is in running state, active and running state. You can see it here. Yes. Okay. Once the Docker is running, yesterday I've shown you how to install Docker. Yum install Docker. That's it. Okay. Let me clear the screen. Let me clear the screen. Yeah. Now, some of the Docker commands, Docker images. You can see that this is Docker images. I can able to execute the Docker commands. You can see that here. Okay. Now, sorry. Now what is this Docker what is this commands, and what are images, what are containers? Let me explain one by one as part of a diagram. Okay, now new. Yes. Okay, now let me explain one by one terminology with which are there with the Docker actually. First terminology is 1 second. Terminology of Docker. Okay, yeah. Now, first thing that you need to understand is Docker image. What is a Docker image actually? Docker image actually. Now, Docker image is kind of a binary in which our application will be there, but not in a running state actually. So Docker image is kind of a binary in which our application will be there, okay, but not in a running state. The application will not be in a running state actually. So what is that? What I can say is you developed an application, but you cannot deploy, you cannot put that code directly onto the servers. Okay, you need to convert that application into a Docker image, so that the Docker image contains the application but not in a running state actually. Suppose what I can say, suppose you want to play any game. Okay, you will be downloading .exe file, executable file from the internet. You will be downloading that game, right? So that game is not running state until and unless you double click on that the exe file, then only the game will be running state. The downloaded exe file is called an image, in this case Docker image, in which our application will be present but not in a running state actually. That is Docker image. So 1 second. It's a binary. It's a binary in which our application will be present, but not in a running state actually, but not in a running state actually. This is Docker image that we call it as. Okay, now second terminology that you need to understand is Docker container. Okay, container. Okay, what is this Docker container? The running state of Docker image is a Docker container. Now in this case, what I told you, you have downloaded a game like .exe file to your local machine, their local laptop. When you double click on that exe file, a game will be started, right? So when you run this Docker image, a Docker container will be running. Okay, container will be running. What is container? Contains. Container, it kind of a box, or a, see, in general, what is a container? Container is a like physical entity where we goods will be present, those goods will be shipping one place to another place, right? So in this, the container is it's a Docker container in which our application will be in running state. Our application will be in running state actually. Okay, now the running state of an image. Okay, you will run this Docker image as a Docker container. That's what I mean. Running state. Okay, 1 second. Running state of a Docker image. Docker image is Docker container actually. Is Docker container actually. So this is the Docker container. When you run this Docker image, it becomes the Docker container. But in the Docker image, application will be there, but not in a running state. But in the Docker container, application will be in running state actually. So that is Docker container. Okay, now the third terminology that you need to understand. Okay, now let me go here. Docker daemon. Okay, daemon. In the operating system terminology, what is a daemon? What is a daemon? Daemon is nothing but a background process that continuously listening for our request. Sorry. Now let me go to my machine. This is a virtual machine, that is a EC2 machine. Okay, now systemctl status docker. When you type this command, there is some process backgroundly running. Actually, you can see that active and running. Okay, it is running since 7 minutes ago. Okay, this is the process. This is a Docker process which is accepting our Docker commands like this. Okay, Docker images. It is accepting our Docker commands actually. So this background process is called a daemon, which is continuously listening for our request is daemon actually. Okay, now let me write it here. Okay, the background process. Okay, command B, the background process which is continuously listening for our request is Docker daemon actually. No, the next terminology, what is Docker host? Okay, now this is the next terminology actually. What is Docker host? The machine on which you install Docker is called Docker host. Okay, this is the EC2 machine. This is the virtual machine. You can see that this is a virtual machine. I have installed Docker on that virtual machine. So this virtual machine is called Docker host. Okay, that is the Docker host that we call it as. Okay, what is a virtual machine? I told you on the physical machine there will be multiple virtual machines. I told you in the first and second classes, right? So something like that. Okay, so the machine on which Docker is installed is Docker host. Okay, so what you need to understand is EC2 machine, virtual server, EC2 server, instance, Docker host, everything will be same. Okay, everything reference to this machine actually. This machine, everything reference to this machine. Okay, now that's what I mean. Okay, now this is the Docker terminal. Yeah, this is the Docker host. Okay, the next terminology that you need to understand is Docker client. Okay, what is Docker client? Command B. Okay, Docker client actually. So what is this Docker client? The place where you are executing Docker commands is Docker client actually. Now you can see that here the terminal, the command prompt of this server is Docker client. You can see that Docker images. I am executing the Docker commands on the command prompt of this server. Okay, that this server command prompt is called Docker client. The place where you are executing the Docker commands or Docker client. Suppose what is a client actually generally means. Suppose there is a website that is hosted on server. Okay, Amazon.in. Somewhere it is hosted somewhere. Now, what is a client? Who is requesting that Amazon.in application? Suppose you entered Amazon.in, right? So my browser is client here. My browser is client here. Like that, the place from where I am executing the Docker commands. Here I am executing from the command prompt of this server. So this command prompt of this server is Docker client. Okay, now I need to write it here. The place where we execute Docker commands is Docker client. Docker client actually. So before moving to the next terminology, before moving to the next concepts, you need to understand these terminologies. That's what I have tried to understand you people here. And the next terminology that you need to understand is Docker registry. Okay. uh, what is There are two types of Docker registries. First type of Docker registry is public Docker registry. Public uh, Docker registry. Okay, second type of Docker registry is private Docker registry. Okay. Now what is this registry actually? This What is a registry means? Okay, the place where we store our Docker images is Docker registry. Okay, now let me show you. Let me go here. If you see hub.docker.com, okay, this is the place. It's a public registry. You can search for whatever the images you want. Nginx is the image. See, Nginx is a Docker image in which application will be present but not in running state. Okay, now all these are Docker images. There are thousands of Docker images that are there as part of this hub.docker.com. This is a public Docker registry. Suppose you have created an application, and out of that application, you have developed an application. Out of that application, you created a Docker image. If you put that Docker image as part of the public Docker registry, I also can able to download that Docker image which you have put, because that is a public, that is accessible to everyone in the world. Okay, now that's a public Docker registry. Okay, now if you store, okay, one second. If you store Docker image, see, what is a registry? Registry is used to store Docker images. Okay, if you like GitHub is used to store your codes, right? Like developed code, right? In the same way, there should be some store to store our Docker images. That is registry, Docker registry actually. If you store our Docker image in public registry, public Docker registry, it is available to everyone in the world. Everyone in the world actually. So that's the thing. Okay, that is public Docker registry. Now, what is a private Docker registry? Who has the access to private, to everyone in the world? It will not be accessible. If you store the Docker image in the private Docker registry, to everyone it is not possible to access actually. Whoever have the permissions to access that image, only those people will only be able to access the Docker images present in the private Docker registry. Generally, in real time, people uses private Docker registries. They will not store their Docker images as part of the public Docker registry, because that is accessible to everyone in the world. So they will store the Docker images as part of the private Docker registry, right? So if let me write it here. If we store Docker images in private Docker registry, it is only accessible to people who have the permissions to that registry actually. So this is the private Docker registry that you need to understand. Okay, these are the terminologies. Some of the terminologies you need to understand. We have Docker networking, Docker volumes, all the things we will be seeing in the course. But yeah, before starting, you need to understand these terminologies. See, if for everyone, is that clear? For these terminologies are clear. Anyone have any questions, please? Anyone have any questions? Open for questions. Okay, okay. Okay, okay, let me move further then. If it's clear, let me move further. Okay, now the next thing that I need to explain is the Docker architecture. Let me put it here. Okay, Docker architecture, actually command B. Okay, now in case of Docker architecture, let me tell you. Okay, now this will be a Docker client. This will be a Docker client, you know, right? What is Docker client? The place where we execute Docker commands is Docker client. We have seen it here, right? Docker client, where is that? Yeah, this is the Docker client we have seen, right? Now we have Docker host here. We have Docker host, something like this. Okay, what is Docker host? Okay, the Docker, the place where on which we install Docker is Docker host. Okay, now we have seen all the terminologies. You can see this here. From today I'm going to call as Docker host, but not about the virtual server or EC2 machine. I'm not going to call that. Okay, now you need to understand that one. Okay, now this is the Docker daemon that is running. Let me label them first. Okay, now this is the let me put inside Docker client. This is the Docker host. This is the Docker daemon. A Docker daemon, and you have one more component, that is Docker registry. This is the Docker registry. Okay, now let me write it here. Okay, this is the Docker registry that you have actually. Okay, this is the Docker registry. Okay, now in this Docker registry there will be multiple Docker images. You can see it here. You will be having Nginx image, something like this, Tomcat image. These are all the applications that you have. MySQL image, Mongo image, busybox. Okay, busybox image. So some of the examples I am taking Docker images. Okay, these are the images that are there as part of this one. Okay, these are some of the examples I took. There are hundreds, thousands of images that are as part of the Docker registry. Okay, now 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 what I am executing as part of this is my Docker client. Now I am executing Docker images. Okay, Docker images. What this command means: to list all the Docker images present on my Docker host, that is represented by Docker images. Okay, Docker images is a command to list all the Docker images present on my Docker host. Okay, that's a command. Now what is happening internally when I execute these Docker images? Let me show you. Okay, let me go here. Okay, now where I am executing the command from my Docker client actually. Now what I am executing? Docker images I am executing. Docker images I am executing. Now from the Docker client I am executing this command, right? So this command which I am executing is listened by the Docker daemon. Okay, this command I am executing is listened by the Docker daemon, and Docker daemon will be always listening for the Docker commands. That's a daemon process, background process that is running, always will be listening for our Docker commands from the Docker client. Okay, now this Docker daemon will understand this command. What is this command? Docker images. Okay, Docker daemon understand, like the user who entered this command want to list all the Docker images present on the Docker host. That's what it will understand actually. Now, as of now, there are no Docker images. There are no Docker images present on my Docker host. Okay, as of now, there are no Docker images present on my Docker host. That is why it is showing empty list. That is why it is showing empty list. There are no Docker images. Some saying like that, right? So now this is, it is showing an empty list. It is showing the empty list. The output here which we are getting will be from Docker daemon. Will be from Docker daemon. Okay, now the next command, let me enter next command. uh, docker pull nginx is the command. What is this command? I am telling to download nginx image from the Docker registry. Okay, docker pull nginx. Let me click on enter. Okay, now yeah, you can see that I have executed this command, docker pull nginx. What is this command? What internally it is doing? Now let me go here. Let me go here. This is doing docker pull nginx. I am executing from the Docker client, right? So this command is listened by this Docker daemon. This command is listened by this Docker daemon. Okay, Docker daemon is connecting to Docker registry and downloading the nginx image onto the Docker host, onto the Docker host, something like this. Okay, that will download nginx image which is present in the Docker registry onto the Docker host. Nginx is the image that it got downloaded. It downloaded actually, right? Because I have what I have executed, docker pull nginx. Now whether it downloaded or not, how to list all that images present on the Docker host using docker images command. Docker images, you can see that the nginx image has been uh, downloaded. What is this image contains? Nginx application it contains, but not in a running state. Okay, that's what it contains actually. Now now what I'm trying to do, next command will be, I'm trying to run this Docker image as a Docker container, right? Docker run hyphen name is equal to web app hyphen d I am using. See, do not worry about this hyphen d and all. I will be explaining in the close course very clearly. Hyphen d is nothing but a detached mode or daemon mode. Okay, now nginx is the image that we have. Okay, this is the image name that you need to give at the end. This is hyphen d. Now you need to give some name to the container. This is the name of the container, that is web app, and docker run is the command to run the particular image as a Docker container. Okay, that is a command. Just click on enter. Just click on enter. Now this Docker image is executed as a Docker container. You can see it here. Now Docker container ls. What is this command? This command will list all the running containers on my Docker host. You can see that here, right? Now what happened internally when I execute this Docker command? Actually, what I've executed, let me put it here. Okay, let me put it here. Let me put it here. Okay, docker run hyphen name is equal to web app hyphen d nginx is the image name that I have executed. This is a command I've executed. So when I execute this command is listened by this Docker daemon. Okay, this Docker daemon. Okay, now Docker daemon is understood this command, saying that, oh, he entered this command, he want to run nginx image as a container. Now what this Docker daemon does, Docker daemon is you will be using this nginx image which is downloaded in the previous command, which is downloaded as part of this previous command by from the Docker registry, and run it as a container. Docker daemon will be doing that. It will be running the Docker image as a container. This is the container that it will be going to run actually. So this is the web app container, because I have named this container as web app. Actually, you can see it here, right? So let me go here, let me put it here, web app. Okay, this is a web app container, right? So that's what it is doing. It is running Nginx image into a Docker container. Okay, now this Nginx image is already present on the Docker host. Okay, the Docker daemon is taking this Nginx image and running as a Docker container. It is already there on the Docker host. Okay, before running this Docker, this command to run it, to run that Nginx image as a container. But if the image is not there on the Docker host, what will happen? Let's see. Okay, now let me run, clear the screen. Okay, clear the screen. Docker images, you can see that images, only nginx image is there as part of my Docker host. Now Docker run hyphen name is equal to Tom. Let me give Tom hyphen d. Tomcat is one more image that is there as part of the Docker registry, but not, it is not there as part of my Docker host. You can see that, right? So Tomcat is the Docker image which is present in the Docker hub.docker.com, that is public Docker registry. Hyphen D is a daemon mode or detached mode. Hyphen name is a Tom, like name of the container. Docker run is a command, right? Now let me click on enter. Okay, now what is happening here? As this Tomcat image is not there on my Docker host, Docker daemon first trying to download the Tomcat image from the hub.docker.com. Okay, before running it as a container. You can see that Docker container ls, you can see that two containers will be running. And if you see Docker images now, it two images will be there, because it downloaded the Tomcat. Docker daemon downloaded the Tomcat image and run it as a container actually. So that's what you need to understand. Let me go here. Let me put it as part of this diagram. Okay, now what is the command I've executed? Let me put it here. Okay, now Docker run hyphen name is equal to Tom hyphen D. Okay, now what is that? Hyphen name is equal to Tom hyphen D. Tomcat, right? Tomcat. Okay, now this command which I've entered here is listened by this Docker daemon. Okay, listened by the Docker daemon, and Docker daemon found that there is no image present on the Docker. Tomcat is, see, Tomcat image is not there on the Docker host as of now. Now what it does, Docker daemon will be connected to the Docker host, Docker registry, sorry, Docker registry, something like this. It will download the Tomcat image to Docker host, like this. Okay, it will download the Tomcat image to Docker host. Okay, like this. Okay, now Tomcat image to Docker host, and it will run this Tomcat image to Docker container. Okay, something like this. Okay, now let me put it something like this, and it will run this Docker image to Docker container like this. Tomcat. Okay, now this is the, what is the name I have given? Tom. You can see that Tom is the name I am given. Name of the container is Tom actually. Okay, Tom. Okay. So this is the Docker architecture you need to understand. It consists of many components: Docker client, Docker host, Docker daemon, Docker registry, all these things. So it is combinedly called as Docker architecture. This is how the internal things are happening in case of Docker. Okay. That's the thing. Any questions, anyone, please, with this before moving further? Is that clear for everyone, or shall I explain one more time? Please put in chat if you are unable to talk. Is that clear or not? Is that clear or not? Mm-hmm. Okay, 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 okay. Thanks for that. Yeah, let me move further then. Okay, let me go to some of the Docker commands that we have. Okay, so we have seen some of the Docker commands. What is that? Docker images. We have seen what is the Docker images to list all the Docker images present on the Docker host, right? So we have some other commands: Docker container ls. You can see that this is the command that we have. Docker container ls is this command. Now to list all the running Docker containers. Now how to stop a particular container? You can see that how there is some command: docker docker stop and the container id. Okay, I am going to stop this. Okay, now this is been stopped. You can see that docker stop container. Each container will be having some container id. You can see that this is the container id that we call it as for that container. If you use that container id, that container will be in stopped state. Now if you see the docker container ls, okay, container ls, it will not show the stopped container, it will only show the running container. You can see that how how you can see the stopped and the running container both at the time. You need to use -a. Docker container ls -a is the command to list all the stopped and the running containers. Just click on enter. You can see that it is also showing the stopped container. This is stopped container. You can see that exited, that means stopped. And this is the running container. Okay, this is the command that you need to use: docker container ls-a, right? Now docker now what's the next command? Docker start and the container id. Just copy this and the container id. Now this container will be again back started docker container ls. You can see that. Okay, you need to understand the difference between these two: docker container ls-a, docker container ls. Okay, now docker container ls-a gives the output both stopped and the running containers, but docker container ls only gives the running containers output. Actually, that's a thing. Okay, now let me clear the screen. Okay, that's a thing. Okay, clear the screen. Okay, 1 second. uh 1 second. Durgasoft people are calling me. 8. So that is a docker command to start the docker containers. Actually, now let me go here. Docker container ls. You can see that these are the two different docker containers are running as of now. Right now, how to enter into this docker container? How to enter into this docker container? What is that command? Docker exec. See all these commands. After getting your drive access, I will be uploading the document. You can refer the document actually. Yeah, if you regularly practice, it is easy for you. Okay, it will, you are going to get. Okay, docker exec -it container id. You need to give /bin/sh is the command to enter into the docker container. To enter into the docker container, just click on enter. You can see that I am inside the docker container. Now previously I am inside the docker host. Now this is a prompt I got, okay, to enter the command. Now I am inside the docker container. That is why this only hash is the prompt I am going to get. Okay, now that's a let me come out of the docker container, exit. Okay, now I am on the docker host now. Okay, that is a command to enter into the docker container. Okay, now I have entered into the docker container, this one. Okay, if you want to enter into the docker container, this one, you need to change this container id at this place. That's it actually. Now let me clear the screen. Now what I can do is docker container ls. Okay, docker container ls. You can see that these are the two different containers that we have. How to check the logs of the particular container? Copy this docker logs and the container id. Okay, these are the logs of that particular container application inside the container actually. Okay, logs of that application present inside the container. Okay, let me clear the screen. Those are the logs that we call it as. Right now, that's a logs. Okay, now before moving further, you need to understand docker run. Let me remove. See, yeah, one more thing. Docker a container ls. These are the two containers that are running. How to remove this particular containers actually? Now copy this command, copy this container id, copy this container id. These are the running containers. You can see that up status, they are in up status. That means you need to forcefully exit these containers which are in which are running containers actually. How to do that? Docker, okay, docker rm hyphen f, okay, container id. One second. Yeah, docker rm represents the remove, and as it is a running container, you need to use hyphen f, that is force. Okay, hyphen f is a, you need to forcefully remove the running containers. You cannot directly remove the running containers. Just click on enter. Okay, your container will be removed if you enter. If you see docker container container, okay, tainer ls, you can see that only one container will be running, that is nginx container. This is how you need to remove the containers which are running actually, that is docker rm hyphen f container id. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, now if you see docker images, if you see there are two images present on the docker host. Now how to remove particular image? This is the image I want to remove, which is tomcat. Okay, now let me copy that name. Okay, docker rmi represents remove image and the image name that I want to remove. Just click on enter. Okay, the image will be removed. If you see docker images, if you see, this is the only image that we have. The tomcat image is been removed, right? So that's the thing actually. Now, okay, now let me run another container actually. Docker run hyphen name is equal to web app, okay, nginx app. Okay, let me give name as nginx app. Okay, hyphen p 1990 colon EIT actually. You need to give something like this colon EIT. I will explain this. What is this? Port mappings. Nginx is the command that Nginx is the image that I want to run it as a container actually. So now you need to understand, this is the image name. This is the port mappings. What is this port mappings? I'll be telling you as part of the diagram. But yeah, now this is the detached mode and this is the name of the container, and docker run is a command to run a particular image as a container. Okay, that's a command. Now let me click on enter. Okay, now container ls, you can see that there are two containers are running. Now just copy this public ip address of the machine. Okay, copy this public ip address of the docker ec2 machine or the docker host, put it here, new browser colon 9090. Just click on enter. You will be able to see the application which is running inside the container, that this application, nginx application, is running inside this container. Actually, inside this container we are able to access that nginx application from my browser actually. So that's what I mean. Right now let me go here. What is this hyphen p? Let me explain hyphen p. Okay, file new actually. Now, okay, now what is the command I have used? Let me put it here. Okay, let me select all these things. Docker run hyphen name is equal to what is the command I have used? Nginx app -d -p 1990:EIT. Okay, 1990:EIT. Nginx is the command I have used, right? So this is the command. This was the command I have used. Okay, docker run -name is equal to nginx app -d 1990:EIT. Nginx I have used. This is a command I have used actually. Now, what is this -p 1990:EIT actually? Now let me go here. Now let me draw a diagram. Okay, now this is my docker host. This is my docker host. Let me label that one. Okay, now this is my docker host. Docker host, and in which my docker container is running, my nginx container is running. What is the container name? Web app, nginx app. Okay, nginx app actually. So this is one. Now see, each and every application. So here nginx application, each and every application will be running on particular port number. Here nginx application will be running on port number EIT. Actually nginx application will be running on port number EIT, something like this. It will be running inside the container actually. Now that nginx application will be running on port number, container port number EIT. Okay, now let me put it here. That is EIT port number, EIT port number. Okay, something like this. Okay, now EIT port number. Now what is this -p 1990:EIT represents? Now that means we are mapping docker host port of 1990, docker host port of 1990 to docker container port of EIT, docker container port of EIT on which the application is running. Here nginx will be running on port number EIT, like Tomcat will be running on port number EIT. MySQL application will be running on 3306, Postgres 5432, okay, Mongo 27017. So each and every application inside the container will be running on particular port on that container actually. So here nginx application will be running on port number EIT. Now what is this -p 1990 represents? You are mapping docker host port of 1990 to container port of EIT on which the nginx application is running. Here 1990 can be different. You can use 7070 or whatever the port number you want, but EIT should be same if you are using nginx application, because EIT is the port on which the container application will be running inside the container actually. Now this docker host has some IP address. Now let me show you what's the IP address of the docker host. This is a docker host. Okay, let me go here. Let me copy it from here. This is a public IP address of the docker host. Okay, let me go to the diagram and let me put it as part of this one. Okay, this is the IP address. Okay, this is the IP address that we have. Right now in my laptop, I have a Chrome browser. Now in this Chrome browser, I have entered the IP address of the machine, okay, of the docker host. Machine means docker host. Let me put it here. Yeah, colon I have entered 1990. That means what that means I have searched for this. Okay, now my Chrome browser will be connecting to the server of that IP address on that server port 1990, because I have entered 1990. So on this 1990 port, this port is mapped to EIT port. The request goes to the container, something like this. On this port, the application will be running and the application is responding to our request saying that welcome to nginx. Okay, well, one second. Okay, something, where is that? Okay, this is how That is why you are getting the response onto your Chrome browser actually. So you need to understand this. Okay, you need to understand this. What is port mapping? -p 9090:80 means 9090 port of the Docker host you are mapping to 80 port of the Docker container. That's what it means. When you access this 9090 port of the Docker host from your browser, you will be able to see the application output as part of your browser. That's what we are seeing here actually. So that I have searched for this. If you search in your browsers as well, let me put it in chat. Okay, everyone, let me go here, and everyone in the meeting, let me put it in chat. So if you search on this IP address colon 9090, you will also able to get the output from to your browsers actually. Welcome to Nginx. The same screen you are going to get, because the application is universal, right? It is accessible to everyone in the world, right? So because yeah, it's a public one. Okay, so that's the thing actually. Any questions anyone has in this diagram? Okay, anyone has any questions in this diagram? Are you people able to access this IP address 9090? Okay, okay. Thanks, Mahinder. Yeah. Anyone? Any questions?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, good question. So
Mhm.
like if you have another application on the same Docker host, right, in the host machine,
Yeah.
so how does it maps? Let us say like Tomcast, bro.
Yes, yes. Let me run another application. Let me go here. I'll tell you. Okay, let me go to my Docker host. Go here. Okay, now let me clear the screen. Okay, Docker run hyphen name is equal to Tom hyphen D hyphen P. I need to use 7070 colon. Tomcat will be running on port number 8080. Tomcat, something like this. Okay, now you have already used 9090 port of the Docker host. You have already used 9090 port of the Docker host, right? You cannot use for the other container. That is why I'm using the 7070. Now let me click on enter. Okay, let me click on enter. Okay, now what it will happen, let me put it in the diagram first. Okay, what it will happen now, it will run one container. It will run one container, and in that container, Tomcat application will be running, something like this. Okay, now Tomcat application will be running. Now on which port Tomcat will be running? It's a general port. Okay, it's a Tomcat application will be running on port number 8080. This is a port on which the Tomcat application is running. Okay, now 1 second. This is the port of 8080. 8080 actually. Now see, you cannot map this Tomcat port again to this 9090. This is not possible, because 9090 is already used on the Docker host. It is listening, it is sending the request to this container, the Nginx container. Okay, you cannot map, you cannot again use this 9090. You need to use the another port, something like this, on the Docker host, which I have used is 7070. Okay, something like this. Okay, 7070 uh, that I have used. Okay, 7070 is the port I have used. And when you access this IP address, let me go here. It is executed as a container. You can see that Docker container ls. You can see that this is a 7070 port which I have port mapped to. Okay, now when I access public IP address, okay, let me put it here, and colon 7070 is a port. Now you are able to see the Tomcat output, Apache Tomcat 10.1.24. Okay, this is the IP address. So that's the thing. Did you get that? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
how many like ports can we have on that host machine? So is there any limitation?
Yes, 0 to 65,565. This is a port range. Actually, if that any of the port is not used out of this port range, so you can use that port. That is a limit. 0 to 65,565 is a limit. Okay, let me put that limit here. 0 to 65,565 is the limit. Okay, that's the thing. Port range. Whatever port you want out of this in this range you can use, but until and unless the port is not used by another process, you can use that port. Okay, now here 9090 is already used by this process, this connection container. You cannot use this 9090 again back to the Tomcat. That's what I mean. It should be free. Port should be free on the Docker host, so you can use that port in this range, actually in this range. Okay, so yeah, that's the thing. Okay, now that's a class for today, and today is the last demo session, and from Monday you are going to shift to the 8 a.m. batch. Okay, now you are going to join with them. Okay, now that's the thing. Okay, that from starting class I am saying this. Okay, you will be switched back to the 8 a.m. so your timings will be going to change to the 8 a.m. actually. So that's what I mean. And go ahead and register for the course. Today is the last demo, and you might have already got the information. Okay, so if you have any questions you can ask. If not, we will meet in the next class, that is on Monday. Okay, thanks. Any questions?
Hi Shiva, can you support on resume preparation also after completed this course? How to
Yes,
build?
yes, I can support that. Any Q&A, any questions?
Even the day before yesterday class, do we have it on the YouTube or somewhere? The Amazon account creation and installing the Docker.
Yeah, it is there on the YouTube. Okay, let me share the YouTube playlist. Let me stop sharing my screen and YouTube playlist. 1 second. It is there. 1 second, where it is. DURGASOFT. Let me go here and playlists. We have it here. Okay. Let me put as part of your chat the playlist link. Okay, this is a playlist link. Okay, it is there as part of that. Yeah, thanks for joining. Okay, thanks for joining session, and please go ahead and register for the course. And today is the last demo. That's what I want to remember. Thank you, thanks everyone. Bye. Bye. Any questions?
Thank you, Bash.
Yeah, bye.